Hello, you have stumbled onto another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life, where we strive for ways to achieve those two goals and we invite our friends on to help us. Today, I'm joined by my good friend, Anne Marie Cabana-Sweet, who I first met at salsa dancing lessons. And since then, through her generosity and just being a really friendly, happy person, we have developed a long-term friendship that I hope goes on forever. But the real star of today's show is actually Brian Tracy. Brian Tracy is going to share his wisdom and his tips on developing a millionaire mindset, but he's not going to actually be here with us. If you don't know Brian Tracy, then you need to climb out of your hole because Brian Tracy's been around for a really long time. He's written over 80 books that have been translated into dozens of languages. He's an international speaker, a motivational speaker, and a self-developed author, meaning that he just taught himself how to write. He taught himself how to speak. He just very accomplished. When I first saw him live for the first time, he was teaching himself how to speak in Russian after already mastering like 3 or 4 other languages, like fluently. I think he's fluent in 3 or 4 languages and is constantly learning. I don't know if he speaks 12 languages or something crazy. He's just always interested in developing himself and helping us, whoever wants to listen to him, to develop themselves. If you've ever heard of the book, Eat That Frog, that's one of his books. Earn What You're Really Worth, No Excuses. He's got a whole bunch of different books that all basically are geared toward the same thing, to help people to be better in sales, better in selling themselves, more self-confident. He has a bunch of things to help people become authors, speakers, and just better in general at what they do. And his philosophy is like, if you can become 0.5% better per week, then by the end of the year, you're going to be 25% better than you are right now. And anyway, that's just a little bit about him. And the way I heard him speak, actually it was, oh my God, it was probably more than 30 years ago, the first time somebody handed me, it was at that time, it was a cassette tape about how to sell better. And it was written by Brian Tracy. He used to do a lot of those kind of cassette things, and probably 8-track tape things, and then CD things. Actually, you have, or Mario still has one of my CDs.
I think I still have one, or maybe it's in the old car that I traded.
Oh no.
No.
Yeah, so he's got a lot of things, but I actually was fortunate enough to spend a week with him and 9 other people at Brian Tracy Speaking Academy, where we basically went there and he tutored us. He taught us some of his tips and tricks about how to become a better speaker, and was very, very generous with his time. You know, he and his wife, Barbara, took us all out to dinner one night. He basically made himself completely available to us to help us in any way that he could with our careers, and has continued to do that. I mean, he wrote an endorsement for my book. He just has been a continuing mentor and just a swell guy.
Well, I guess that probably helps when you're trying to convince people to do something, that you have to be nice.
Well, that's true. That's true. That's one of the things, how to win friends and influence people, right?
You get more with honey.
That's for sure. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So he has written basically a lot on getting your mind, because if you want to become a millionaire, if you want to, right, be financially successful, you first have to say to yourself, why aren't I already financially successful?
Mm-hmm.
How many books have been written about it? How many, right? You just could go to the library, and if you really wanted to be a millionaire, you could just go to the library every day for a year and read everything you could find. And at the end of it, you wouldn't be able to avoid it, right?
Well, you still have to work to earn something. You can, if you're every day in the library reading, who's paying you to do that?
Yeah,
Right?
that's true. You might have to go after work.
Yeah, you might have to go after work. But then while you're at work, maybe you'll figure out a nice way to increase
Yeah,
what you're earning already.
right. But it's all about I the more people I talk to, I mean, I've interviewed a lot of interesting, very successful people for the podcast. And the more people I talk to, they're all reinforcing that same idea is that you have to be persistent. You really have to just meet, like, I am going to become rich. I don't care what it takes. I'm going to do it. Every time I make a mistake, that's what Joseph Rodriguez calls optimization data. So I just screwed something up. What I tried to do didn't work. So now I'm going to go back and use that information to do it better the next time, as opposed to someone who's not so persistent. They're just going to say, oh, that didn't work. I guess I'm not meant to be rich. Right.
Right. So you talked about mindset. So there you go. I mean, oh, I'm just not meant to be rich is not the proper mindset.
Exactly. Exactly. So when I was talking with Brian about, I told him I was going to do a podcast on millionaire mindset. And he was basically, it kind of comes down to do what millionaires do, which is what also Tony Robbins says, right? Success leaves clues. So if you want to be, right?
Well, obviously, with all the podcasts you've done, with all the people successful that you have talked to, there is some, nobody in the podcast that you've done have withheld information from you. I don't think you've ever felt like they're not telling you how they got successful
Right.
or what got them where they are.
Right.
So they did leave the trace.
So
They
all you have to do if you want to be rich is go listen to the last 57 podcasts.
and go to the library and read all the books about becoming a millionaire. Yeah,
Exactly.
no, but you also have to work. Somehow you have to find a way to generate money coming in, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. But so hold on a second. What, hon? John's watching. So this is Brian Tracy's advice. One of the things he says about developing a millionaire mindset is, so there's two rules. This is what wealthy people have, this idea that they're not trying to look for a get rich quick scheme, because part of what I'm learning and understanding is that while you're on your journey to getting rich, you're evolving, right, as a person, so that you are going to be that person who is mentally and in all other ways ready to be rich.
Mm-hmm.
So he says rich people have two rules. Rule number one, don't lose money. Rule number two, if you ever feel tempted, refer back to rule number one. So that's the first way to get rich, is don't lose money. Which
Don't
seems,
lose money.
yeah, that seems like a, sorry.
But I'm sure there's a bunch of people that will tell you that they have failed,
Exactly.
and in their failure, they might have lost.
Well, that's true. You're absolutely right. And
But I think your persistence uh, idea is
right.
what probably got them to, okay, I made a mistake, I lost this, I won't make it again if I could keep on going.
Exactly, that persistence. Like, they know in their mind, they know that they're going to be rich. They've already made up their mind. Like,
Right,
I know I'm going to be successful. So if this thing happens, if this thing that I'm trying to do doesn't work, but
right,
they're thinking of that as a forever thing, right? They're not thinking, oh, I'm going to just, wake up in the morning and win the lottery. They're
right,
thinking, I'm going to develop myself into a person who's going to always have money.
right,
And so one of the ways he says is that wealthy people spend a lot more time thinking about money, which is kind of interesting, because you might think, oh, I'm financially free, I don't have to think about money. And actually, last week I was talking to another friend of mine, Wilbert Winberg, and I said, how does it feel now that you don't have to think about money anymore? And he said exactly that. Actually, he said, I spend a lot more time thinking about money than I used to. And that's exactly what Brian said. He said the average adult spends like 2 or 3 hours a month studying and thinking about their money. And usually they're thinking about, oh, I don't have enough, or I got to pay these bills or whatever. But the average self-made millionaire spends 20 or 30 hours a month thinking about studying and planning their wealth and their finances and stuff like that. So, I mean, Warren Buffett, how much time do you think he spends thinking about success, thinking about money, thinking about, right?
I think he probably spends a good part of every day looking at where it's at and where it's going and what he can do to make it better.
Exactly. And
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 it's all
and
about
talk
money.
about reading
Yeah.
every book in the library, right?
Yeah. We'd start with Warren Buffett's or Brian Tracy's.
No, Warren Buffett, thinking about how many books he's read. And
Oh, yeah.
I forget what he said, like how many books he had read by the age of 17, like 100 books about money or something like that before he was even 17 years old.
There's no doubt that the more knowledge you have about it, the better
Yep,
you equipped you are to think about it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's actually brings us to number 2, which is obviously develop the habits of healthy people, like we were talking about before. But one of the habits is getting good financial advice.
This can't be that easy.
Say that again.
This can't be that easy. Well, it could be, but I mean, how do you find somebody how do you know that somebody is good versus not good?
Well, yeah, there again, you have to so you would ask for referrals. You would talk to some of your wealthy friends and say, who helps you manage your money, right? Who
Mhm.
helps you learn about investing and I mean, this Better Investing, the group that I belong to, I'll put a link in the yeah. I'll put a link to Better Investing on the podcast website, which is getyourfillpodcast.com, because they're fantastic about teaching people how, like, good investment fundamentals. If you're interested in investing in stocks, you'll find a host of people who really want to teach you how to invest in stocks there. And not because they're going to make money, but just because they're already wealthy and they just love helping other people to learn about what they are interested in.
Yeah, it's very interesting that a lot of people that did become successful are more than willing to share their knowledge and what they've learned.
Yeah.
They're more than willing to welcome more people into this area mindset of wealth,
Yeah.
of sustainability. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, well, because it's a passion too. It's almost like a hobby. Like, when you like to dance, you want to help other people learn to dance, right? When you get to that point where you're really successful, then you get joy out of helping other people find joy in the same thing that you love.
Right.
And Brian Tracy also talks about the habit of investigating before you invest. So the rule, he says, is spend as much time investigating the investment as you spend earning the money that you're thinking of investing. And I'd be willing to bet that very few people do that.
Yes. It's kind of fascinating to me because of where I work right now to have so many people around me that have no clue
Yeah.
and are not looking to find out what anything about finances is. Uh, they'll especially now because credit cards give it or banks give it, they'll go, oh, I have this credit score, but they have no clue how they got it. They have no clue how to improve it. They have no clue what's involved in it.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating how it doesn't even cross their mind that could be part of learning how to manage your money. You work every day, you make money, you shouldn't learn how to take care of it.
Exactly. It's interesting because, one of the ways that Brian originally became successful is he was working in sales, and was banging his head against the wall like many new salespeople do. And
Uh-huh.
so one day he just went up to the guy who was killing it, right? The guy who had the best sales in the company. And he said, yeah, how do you do it? And the guy told him, so he wrote it all down and he started doing it, and sure enough, he got successful. He said to himself, and I'm sure the guy who was really successful is saying the same thing. He openly, willingly, happily shared that information with Brian. Why didn't anybody else in the company ask this guy how he was successful? They were just happy to say, oh, he's just lucky. Oh, this or that. They were just so busy, or just not thinking about it. Like, just not like, but like you said, the same thing with money. Like, if you are not wealthy and you know someone who is, even if they're only a little more wealthy than you, like they could come to you, Anne-Marie, and say, gee, what's one thing I can do to be more financially successful? And you would say, perhaps, get a handle on your credit score.
Yeah.
Right?
Do
So
you?
simple.
Yeah. Or do you even know where your money goes? Do you know where your money goes? You know, a lot of people, it's funny because people, uh, uh, like have all these I was having a discussion with somebody. So you have your Netflix subscription and your cable subscription and your gym subscription and this other subscription you got, and do you realize that $100 a month of your paycheck is going somewhere that you're not using?
Yeah.
Do you even realize that? And I think a lot of people don't.
Well, not only that, they're thinking, oh, it's only $20 for this. It's only, I'm only
Yeah, they
spending
don't add it
$100 a
up.
week on lunch, and not realizing how much that money could be, how much it adds up to,
Right. And
and
how
what it
much
could be doing for them.
exactly. And so to bring back Mr. Buffett, who says the greatest invention was the interest rate,
The magic of compounding interest.
compounded interest. So, yeah, but yeah, so they don't understand how that could work.
Yeah.
And that's sad and scary at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, people actually, I think it's really kind of funny because this is on the news all the time. You know, Jeff Bezos and Amazon didn't pay any taxes, and they didn't pay any taxes, but that's a good reason why they didn't pay any taxes, is because they're managing their money, and
Right.
sometimes they spend somewhere so they can deduct it, and it there's another learning things to be had there
Yeah.
that a lot of people, so a lot, I don't even remember how long ago, a long time ago, people were telling me, oh, I claim zero even though I have 4 kids because I like it at the end of the year, I
Yeah.
get a big check.
Yeah.
Oh, you get a big check, but you could have had that money in a bank account getting compounded interest. So your money could be working for you, but no, instead you rather give it to the government and it sits there. The government uses it.
Yep. Exactly.
And then at the end of the year, they give it to you, but you haven't made any money on that money.
But because they would have spent it. They know they would have spent it.
Yes, they know they would have spent
So
it.
you got to
So,
put your money to work. Send your money out there to work. Instead of you going to work, send your money off to work.
exactly, exactly.
But you're right. People don't. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. We had a little interruption.
That happens.
So so back to poor Brian, who we abandoned for a minute here. One of his big thing is insuring everything. Anything that you can't quickly write a check to cover,
Yeah.
insure it. So that's not fun, right? Nobody wants to pay money for insurance unless you're planning on cracking up your car, or you're burning down your house or whatever. But yeah, that's one of the big things because people have been ruined, right?
Yes.
You
Yes,
hear
definitely.
I don't think you can do it in every state. Some states protect you from losing everything because of like healthcare costs, but there are people who have basically become destitute because of their healthcare bills and stuff like that, because
Yeah.
they didn't think they could afford health insurance, but then
In the end. Yeah,
in the,
well, this is a big thing, and but so I hear different stories, like when I had my children in Florida, I was told that there were two sides of the hospital and the maternity ward. There was the side where the people with insurance, where you got, the great room and all that stuff. And then there was the side where you showed up at the hospital to have a baby and you didn't have insurance. So the care was not the same, obviously. And I'm assuming that the bill is not the same, because on my side they were, and I think it was more, um, it was more for people that definitely didn't have insurance.
yeah,
But if a problem arises, it becomes a big problem.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so this is one big problem. But it's hard for a Canadian to talk about healthcare. Very hard.
Yes, I understand that. That's a whole discussion for another day.
Yes, yes, yes. So what else is Brian saying? Because my car is insured, my house is insured.
Good. So you're all set then. So he says wealthy people cover their assets.
Well, yeah, I'm wearing pants.
And it's exactly what you were talking about with Jeff Bezos. He's, you don't pay unnecessary taxes. You don't get frivolous lawsuits. You have people who are looking out for your wealth. You're not just, oh, I don't want to pay money for an accountant, so I'm going to instead pay way more than I should in taxes, right? You're thinking about wealth preservation instead of like.
Right. So I think that you just touched on it. There's a difference between wealth growth and wealth preservation, and thinking about it that way too.
Yeah, and not thinking of working for the rest of your life. If you're intentionally wanting to retire early, or at least be able to retire comfortably as soon as possible, then that's what you need to do, is to.
But there has to be an assessment too. There's a lot of thinking going on. You have to decide, what do you want to go to do
Right.
in your retirement,
Well, you're absolutely right. What does retirement look like? What does it look like when you stop working?
Right. Are you playing golf every day? Are you at the mall every day? Are you traveling all the time?
Yeah.
Are you, what are your financial needs going to be? You want to be, be a million
Because otherwise, I mean, you might find out you need more money than you needed when you were working.
Right. Right. Because when you were at work, you weren't spending all this money.
Exactly. You didn't have time to spend all your money.
Yes. Yes. There's big changes in retirement.
So the other thing that Brian talks about is basically, thinking about the money you spend, obviously, but also negotiating better, negotiating more effectively, and asking for higher prices when you're selling and for lower prices when you're buying. And I actually, we don't always think about this. It was probably maybe a year or two ago that I found out that you can negotiate for your mortgage rate. I never knew that, right? You think, oh, the bank is just going to give you what they give you, and the only way to get a low rate is to call every bank in town.
Right.
Not so. Not so. You can actually negotiate with whoever you want and just say, hey, I got this better rate from onlinebank.com, and they'll usually match it. And I also, when I went years and years ago, I worked at King's department store. And this lady came in. She didn't speak very good English. It took me a while to understand what she was saying, but she had all these receipts. And she was showing me, I was working at the service desk, how much money she had spent in the store. And she wanted a discount. And I thought, what? But sure enough, I said, well, I can't do that. I called the manager and he gave her like a 15% discount. And I thought, oh, wow, and why not, right? Why shouldn't we all be doing that? Why shouldn't we all be negotiating for discounts in no matter what we're going to do?
And the funny part is that most places will give discount. A lot of places will match prices. Hey, I saw this ad for this thing. I want to buy it from you. Give it to me for
Exactly.
the same price. Definitely. Definitely.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then he talks about what you're saying. Albert Einstein says the greatest power in the universe is the magic of compounding interest. In
it's Albert
99% of the
Einstein.
cases, sorry,
That was Einstein. I thought it was
Buffett, no, it was
Leonardo.
Einstein. And he says, uh, 99% of the cases where people become wealthy, it's over a long period of time. And part of it is based on the magic of compounding interest.
Hmm. And I think that's one of the reasons a lot of the rich people stay rich is every day their money is making money.
Exactly. And
You
figuring
know,
out how that happens. You know what I
yeah.
learned the other day from a client of mine who's a very wealthy individual. He told me that if they want to borrow money, they can actually take some of the stock in their portfolio and allow the bank, it's almost like a passbook loan. So the bank is going to temporarily hold on to these stocks that they own.
Hmm.
The bank doesn't own the stocks. They don't sign ownership over to the bank.
Hmm.
But so let's say I own $100,000 worth of Microsoft stock. I'm going
Right.
to sign that over to the bank
Yeah.
and they're just going to keep it. It's still my stock. It's still growing. It's still increasing in value, but they're just going to give me $100,000. And as soon as I pay it back, then I get my stock, control my stocks back. They're not even, it's just
It- yeah. And if you personally, if you have a stock that pays dividends on top of that,
exactly.
you're good.
Exactly. And there's all kinds of secrets that we have no idea about because we're not in that category. But once
Hmm.
you start learning, once you start reading and right and start taking the advice of these people who you're paying, the CPAs and the attorneys and all these other people who you're paying.
Hmm.
But
Yes. So what other great knowledge does Brian have to give us?
well, you know what the main thing is, and this, like I said, I was just listening to Joseph Rodriguez saying the same thing. Other people have said the same thing, but achieving actual financial independence is it's normally a slow process because it's the person that you have to become, more self-confident, more courageous, a better, bigger character, more persistent. Becoming that person is what takes the time,
Hmm.
right? Once you figure out how to make the money, right? Once you get to be that person,
Hmm.
just making the money will be easy. And Brian Buffini says that. He said, if you could take away everything I own, my house, my car, everything, leave me in my underpants, on some street in some town, and within a year, I'll be back up on top because now he knows how to do it. Now his mindset is such that it's just like anything, right? That what's the 5-minute mile? Oh, it's impossible to run less than a 5 minute. A human being can't do it. And then once the first human being does it, right?
Yeah.
Now everybody's doing it
Yeah.
because this is what broke the 5-minute mile, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And yes, this is very powerful
Yeah.
and very useful
Exactly. If we just remember to use it.
if we ever use it. Yes, and when we use it, it usually works pretty good. And when we
Yeah.
don't use it, it kind of goes a little. It's like everything else. If you
Yeah.
don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah,
ever do you ever read the book The Millionaire Next Door?
part of it.
Yeah.
Part of it.
In that book, they say it takes the average millionaire 22 years to accumulate $1 million.
Okay.
But those people in that book are working, right? They're saving their money.
Yes.
And that's obvious. And then through that 22 years, they're learning how to invest it. They're finding the right people to give them advice, right?
Right.
But same thing, if they were going to make their second million, I bet it doesn't take another 22 years.
I bet you're right. I bet you are right.
Yeah.
I bet you are right.
The
Definitely.
very first person who I interviewed for the podcast, um, Tyler Sheff, he said, figure out how to make $100 consistently, passively, and then
Mm.
just do that as many
Over
times
and
as you
over
need to
again.
in order to get the passive income stream that you want, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Definitely.
there are so many different ways to become wealthy, but the the thing is, you just have to make up your mind, I think, that it's possible.
Yeah. Yes, you have to. Do you think you have to make it your passion?
Well, that's what what's his face says. Now I'm having Napoleon Hill, that you have to develop a money consciousness, and
Mm-hmm.
that you have to have a burning desire to be, do, and have this person, right? To be this person who is successful. And until you do that, he doesn't feel that you can accomplish it. But it does have to be your focus. But what's interesting is, when you were talking about the people who you work with who are just not, I mean, they probably they look at the 1% and they think, oh, they've had it, whatever, silver spoon, they got lucky, they were smart, whatever. Not stopping and saying, how can I do it?
Right.
And
Exactly.
I can honestly say that for the majority of my life, I did the same thing. I just thought, this is where I am, and this is where other people are, and I'm just not them. I'm just not whatever. I was born with these disadvantages, blah, blah, blah. But it's at a certain point, if you're lucky, you realize that that's all BS.
It's all in your mind. It's all in here again. And this is the bad part, because
Right.
you're not using it
Exactly.
creatively or positively.
Exactly. If we're
That,
not,
yeah,
until you get your head right, you're
right.
going to be like those people. What is it? Like 2% of people who win the lottery have any money at all. Like
After
98% of them have less than they started with when they
yeah.
won the lottery after 5 years or something ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They haven't developed that mindset, that money consciousness, that the habits of wealthy people.
Because it takes a while to develop it.
Yeah.
And you just said it takes a while. And when you get a whole bunch of cash all at once and you have never had it before, you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Well, look at all these celebrities and all these people that it's the same sort of thing. They find kind of overnight success, and then
Yeah.
they don't know how to act. They don't, I think some deep down inside, maybe they don't feel like they're worthy of it or whatever.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But again, we're going to go back.
Back to the head, back to
Here,
the head.
back to the
All in
head.
the head.
In here.
All
It's
in
all
your head.
how you process it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what have you done? Are you, I know, having known you for some years,
Yes.
I know that you're consciously thinking of, how am I going to have this passive income stream in my retirement?
Mm-hmm.
And do you feel like you've had to make some mindset shifts?
Yes. I think I have learned a lot in the last 10 years, a lot of things I had no idea about. Uh, I, yeah, a lot. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. Listening to us talking about this, the things that I think maybe I have not taken care of is maybe surrounding myself with enough people with good advice. Um, I don't feel I'm in a bad place financially, so I am not too worried. And but there's still plenty of room for growth. There's still plenty of room for growth. Yes, working
Yeah.
on it, working on it. But you're right. It's it's something that you have to be patient with.
Mm.
It's never going to come a big, well, it might come a big $100,000 check that you can invest and make lots of interest on. or have an incredible return on your purchase of stock or something like that. But it's a little bit at a time. It's the $100 every month, the $200 every month
Yeah.
that stashed away keeps growing, keeps growing, keeps growing, and it's a snowball effect. And
Yeah.
the bigger it gets, the bigger the return.
Yeah.
So you have to be patient. I guess it's better if you start early than late, but definitely learned a lot, and it has definitely changed my mindset. My
Yeah.
mindset has changed. Yes, definitely, definitely. But there's still so much more to learn.
You know, it's odd to me, and I guess my upbringing, and I think, you know, possibly yours as well, that we're told so many negative things about wealthy people. I don't know. That was what you know, like, it's just like
I
a, no.
I wasn't told that much bad things about wealthy people. Uh, I think the biggest problem I've had is women don't do that. I still have that conversation once in a while. When I was born, a woman couldn't have a credit card. A woman couldn't get a mortgage.
Yeah.
It was on her. Even, I mean, and this is the part that sometimes is hard to comprehend. So yes, maybe at some point in the early 70s, some woman fought to be able to get their own credit card and all that stuff, but it wasn't the majority. My mother taught me how to be a good wife. She
Yeah.
didn't tell me how to balance a checkbook. I knew my dad was keeping an eye on his money. I knew my dad was investing money. I know he had his own business, all that stuff. But there's, so I did learn a little bit that my dad was doing certain thing with his money that maybe somebody else's dad wasn't doing, because unfortunately for my dad, he was able to retire relatively young, and that's because he had investments and all that stuff. But it was never a thing like, you're going to learn this because you're going to have to do it. No, you're going to marry a guy and he's going to provide for you.
Right.
Which didn't really work out.
I know. Well, even that's why I didn't go to college right out of high school, because everybody was saying that you go to college to get your MRS degree.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I don't want that.
Well, so I went to college a couple times, and I wasn't looking for an MRS degree. But of course, I did learn. But I think as a woman, depending on your life situation, it's not something that really had crossed my mind until I was like, I had to.
Yeah.
Until I had to. So I'm really glad that times are changing, that women are way more knowledgeable about it, and because us mother have taught our daughters, look, you have to learn this. Amelia knew about putting money away in a 401k in her first job that offered it and matched it.
Yeah.
I didn't learn about it until, oh my God, probably in my late 30s.
Yeah.
And I had already had multiple jobs, and I probably had multiple jobs that matched.
Yeah.
So it's a very different, I think that makes a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's a good point.
There's a lot of things I think that have happened that maybe my generation is not at the same place as the younger generation.
Well, let's hope.
Yes, I'm hoping that all the girls are putting their money away.
I hope so.
Buying stock at reduced price for their company and putting money in 401k.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
All right. Anything else you want to share or say, or anything imparting?
I think we've discussed the wonderful ideas of Brian Tracy, and I think you've brought up more than enough, not more than enough, but you've been
Too much.
constant. No, not too much, but you've been constant at bringing these podcasts, and before that, when you did the whole Think and Grow Rich thing throughout the year, at helping, promulgate all of this financial independence knowledge.
Thank you.
Yes, very, very thankful, because you have helped a lot in moving this brain along. You definitely have.
Thank you.
Big part of this process.
Oh, thanks. That
Uh,
feels nice.
it's a well-deserved compliment. You've helped a lot.
Thanks.
No doubt. No doubt.
So thank you, Anne Marie, for joining us today. And thank you, Brian Tracy, for being with us in spirit, if not in person,
Yes.
and bringing us your wealth building mindset tips. And thank you, listener, for listening. Be sure to come to the website, getyourfillpodcast.com, and subscribe and take advantage of the links that we're going to put out there to all the stuff that we talked about today. And be sure to be here next week when we are going to talk to Anne McNeil about continuing on with our Millionaire Mindset series. In the meantime, have a fantastic week.
All right. You too, Chris.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.